So, I don't know if you noticed, but the Episcopal Church was in the news this week. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. I was struck by some of the news about that news. The good news that the Bishop of Washington preached at the National Prayer Service in the National Cathedral the day after the inauguration ceremony. Fox News, ever fair and balanced, had the headline, "Bishop who lectured Trump says she has no regrets." Now, I watched a video of the sermon, and I didn't see anybody giving a lecture to anybody else. I saw one human being speaking to another human being on behalf of some other human beings. And Caitlin Matthews, who writes an opinion column for the Atlantic Monthly, had a piece headlined, "Christ Light Sermon," expressing the opinion that the Bishop of Washington missed a golden opportunity to score some points on the side of Jesus was a liberal. And to tell the president and everybody else assembled that there is nothing more Christian than taking a stand on behalf of the rights of immigrants. Which I took as a misreading of the context within which the Bishop of Washington spoke. Yesterday, I took the time to reread the now classic essay from 1966 by the late, great sociologist of religion, Robert Bellah, with whom, incidentally, I used to worship at All Souls Episcopal Church in Berkeley during my seminary days. Civil Religion in America, in which he put forward the hypothesis that every political community, nation, state, what have you, has, along with whatever religion may be practiced in that community, a civil religion with its own rituals and symbols and narratives and beliefs. And whether this is universally true, as Bella surmised, he made the case very convincingly that it is true of the United States of America. And the National Prayer Service in the National Cathedral upon the inauguration of a new president is nothing if not a civil religious event, where it would be out of place to make any claims on behalf of Jesus or Christians, but where it would be entirely appropriate to call to mind the basic unifying principles, the transcendent values that bind us together in one, in that civil religion. And I think the Bishop of Washington did a good job of enunciating some pretty good principles. Honoring and respecting the dignity of every human being. Speaking the truth, especially about other human beings. That is to say, speaking the truth in love. And humility. having the humility to know that no one person among us ever holds all the truth, that we all see as in a mirror darkly, and we all need each other to get through and arrive at some approximation of justice and liberty for all. So when, for example, the people had returned from exile in Babylon under the patronage of the Emperor of Persia, who had destroyed the Babylonian Empire, 150 years or so after the Babylonian armies had destroyed Jerusalem and taken all the elite of the city off to exile. And the people were having some issues. For example, wanting to, as they were rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem and rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem, the people who'd been left behind there for 150 years in the land said, well, we've gotten pretty used to worshiping God just, wherever. Do we really need to go to Jerusalem? Do we really need to give our tithes and our offerings to support the Levitical priesthood and the whole temple thing? Or when some of the returning exiles wanted to intermarry with the foreigners who were living there in the land when they came back, there were those who said that was a problem. So they had a big political meeting in the square in Jerusalem and summoned all the people. And the scribe Ezra got up to read the scroll of the law. And it says that the Levites and others were there to interpret. Because the people didn't speak Hebrew anymore. They needed to have it translated into Aramaic for them and the sense of it given to them. And it also says that when they heard the words of the scroll of the law, the people wept. But it doesn't say why. It doesn't say that they wept out of guilt or remorse for not having kept the law. It doesn't say that they were moved to tears by the beauty of it. It doesn't say that they wept because they understood that they would not be able to keep it in its entirety because they were reduced to being a vassal state under the rule of Persia. Maybe all of the above. But Ezra and the other leaders, I tell them to go their way and not to weep. Because according to the law and the calendar, this is a feast day. This is a time for celebration and feasting and bringing a portion of the feast to those who do not have any, so that all the people together can rejoice and celebrate that God has spoken good news to them in returning them to Jerusalem and in giving them this law to live by. A law instructing them in the ways of justice and equality and mutual respect, and particular concern for the widow orphan and the sojourner in their midst. And around the same time, probably still in exile in Babylon, the prophet Isaiah was laying out what the Spirit of God had said to him to proclaim to the people how it would be that they would return and be restored, and that Jerusalem would become that holy Zion, that city of light where there is no more violence and destruction and ruin that we heard chanted so beautifully at the outset of our service. And Isaiah says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, the recovery of sight for the blind, physically or spiritually, bind up the brokenhearted, to release the captives, let the oppressed go free, proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, that year of Jubilee, when all debts are canceled, and all slaves are freed, and all the property is redistributed." That, says the Spirit of God, is how the glory of Zion will be restored. And when Jesus sets out to begin his ministry, he reads that passage to his hometown folks in Nazareth, as if to say, "You've heard about me. The news, they're talking about me in the news, hereabouts. You're all wondering what I'm going to say. Isaiah got it right. The Spirit that is upon me, the Spirit that I have come to immerse you in order to restore and renew God's promise to God's people, is that spirit of Jubilee." So when the Bishop of Washington spoke on behalf of immigrants in our country, as if they were human beings with children and jobs and hopes, aspirations, and dignity and value and worth in the eyes of God. Well, that was good news to them. And if she spoke of people in the LGBTQIA plus community in the same vein, or refugees fleeing from conflict and violence and oppression in other lands, that was good news to them. So in that sense, I guess, even though she was at a ceremony of our civil religion, she was preaching the gospel. So the question is, was anybody listening? People just want to argue about what she did. Or do they want to listen to what she said? This proclamation of the good news to the poor. Some of you may be poor. If you're not, maybe you have some other news. This proclamation, says Jesus, is fulfilled today in your hearing. By my saying it, it's true. It's not just empty words, not just special pleading, not just political speech, but it is God's communication of the Spirit to you about your own worth, about your responsibility. To make it true. Not just for your own sake, for the sake of your neighbors, for the sake of the idea that we are in fact a people who have some transcendent purpose, some eternal values to which we are pledged. That as Christians we hold in common with Jews and Buddhists and Sikhs, and Hindus and Native Americans and atheists. Some bedrock principles of treating one another with respect, as if we are in fact one body. We all need each other. And the less respectable members are worthy of the highest honor. As if we can and must speak the truth to each other about each other in love. As if we have been shown how to do this with humility, with compassion for ourselves as well as others. Knowing that only the Spirit really knows. Only the Spirit really knows what our purpose is as a people. But that if we remain true to these principles, and we proclaim them, and we act on them, it's not too late. We can be renewed. We can be restored. To unity, to grace, to health, to sight, to freedom, to liberty, and justice for all.